There's really only one thing that brings this town together, and that's the Redskins. Every fall, the Redskins bring everybody together, and they root on the same team. In fact, I was out last year for the opening game. For the record, I bought my own ticket, so I was sitting way up in the nosebleed section. But I focused, there was an empty seat down on the 50-yard line, and it was empty at the start of the game, and at the end of the first quarter, and at the end of the second quarter, it was still empty. So I walked down about 5 tiers to where the seat was. It was still empty. There was an elderly lady sitting there. I said, "Ma'am, is this seat taken?" She said, "Well, as a matter of fact, it's not." I said, "Would you mind if I sat here for the second half?" She said, "Go ahead, be my guest." I said, "I can't believe this seat's empty. These are scalping for a couple $100 out front." She said, "Well, that was my husband's ticket." She said, "We'd been to 30 straight Redskins openers together, but he died. But I know he would have wanted me to be here today." And I said, "Ma'am, I am so sorry." I said, "But couldn't you have found a friend or a relative or somebody that could have used the other ticket?" She said, "No." She said, "They're all at the funeral." So it's anyway, just a couple quick things. It is very polarized. I appreciate the opportunity you've given me. My favorite charity's been the town of Vienna, which we put a few $1 million in for different road improvements, and I hope whoever succeeds me will be as successful as we've been. But it's been a great opportunity to live here for part of my tenure here. The one thing we're not seeing candidates addressing this year, and 3 major issues I want to just address very, very briefly. One is energy independence. We have a confluence now of the issue of global warming and energy independence coming together. And we have just not, as a nation, as Republicans and Democrats and House and Senate and everybody, really come together. We did raise CAFE standards this year, which is miles per gallon standard. We did nibbled around the edges. Sometimes some people want to drill their way out of it with oil. Some people want to conserve their way out of it. Alternative fuels are critical. I agree with Senator McCain that corn ethanol is a boondoggle, but sugarcane ethanol, 9 times more efficient. I was down in Brazil for a global warming conference just a couple of months ago. But this is something we ought to be across the table and should not be dependent on these dysfunctional countries around the world for our energy supply 10 years from now. And I just hope that everybody can write their plan. Everybody's got their plan in the back of an envelope somewhere that they can, but the problem is trying to get it through. How do you get these things through? But that's a critical issue for us over the long term, geopolitically, environmentally, and economically. The second big issue that nobody's talking about is what happens as the baby boomers retire. I'll tell you what happens to the federal budget is it crashes because all of a sudden Social Security starts paying out more than it takes in, Medicare costs continue to rise, and it squeezes out money and opportunities to do almost anything else in government. And the earlier we address this, I think the more options we have. There are a lot of people that are going to sign pledges saying that I don't want to, I will not cut any benefits, or people that say I will not raise taxes. I never signed any of that. You need to be flexible and nimble to get anything through the legislative process. And this is something that we ought to be able to work together on. We may not reach agreement, but we ought to be discussing. Political leaders don't discuss it because there are no good alternatives, except that we are an airplane crashing into the mountain at this point. And there's very little reward for political leaders who get out in front. And what you find out, particularly in election year, candidates are very risk averse to talking about these issues. But it has got to be addressed. The head of the GAO just quit in frustration. He's going to make a lot more money. He's going to a foundation now dedicated to deficit reduction and to reforming the entitlement process, which now eats up over 40% of the dollars. Over 60% of the money we spend every year doesn't even go to Congress. It's on autopilot. It is interest on the debt, and it is in Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and a handful of other entitlement programs. And those are the fastest rising costs of government, going up at 7.5% a year. And the third issue goes to American competitiveness. We're in a global economy now. There's a lot of denial on that in some quarters, but it's there whether we like it or not. This is the economic system that has replaced the old Cold War system. And for us, keeping America competitive, this economy, is critical. And it's not just trade. I'm a free trader, as is my colleague Jim Moran next door. Northern Virginia benefits greatly from free trade. The exports coming out of here far outweigh what we're paying. We are generating a huge trade surplus in the information technology, which is basically the backbone of our economy up here. And trade is a component of that. And cutting deals around the globe so that we are cutting barriers to our entry in other foreign markets is an important part of that, and getting intellectual property laws that are congruent. But it's not just trade. It's our education system. Today, over half of the graduate students in American universities in the physical sciences, in engineering and in computer science are foreign nationals. And we're not home-growing our own. And by the way, our immigration laws don't allow most of these people to stay. They go back and compete with us and start a company in Singapore or India or China that ends up competing with us and creating jobs there. I mean, these are exactly the kind of people you want here in this country, using their ingenuity and innovative juices to create ideas and build companies here. But our education system has failed us in this regard and is not tuned to where we need to go over the next 20, 25 years. Our immigration laws completely broken. We could have a long discussion about that. It's an uncomfortable discussion for some people to talk about it. We need relatively open borders, but they need to be regulated. And the problem today is they're open and not regulated. But they have got to be regulated, but you've got to have people being able to move across as jobs are created in a regulated fashion. And it's a difficult political discussion because you get into the whole illegal issue, you get into the jobs issue, you get into all of these issues. But right now, Congress is punted. Nothing's coming to the floor in the House or the Senate, not even coming to the floor because it's an election year. And what happens is you want to protect your members from difficult votes, and so we're punting. It's a very, very frustrating, but a very critical issue. And finally, our tax laws. I'm sure the candidates will have a robust debate, and there are a lot of theories over the best way to do that, but they've got to be retooled for an information-based and a global economy. The tax laws we have now have been written over 50 years, and whoever's in the room got their tax break, and if you weren't in the room, you didn't. And by the way, once you get it, it seems to go on forever. But these are elements to keep American competitive that over the next 10 years, if we don't do something, we're going to look over our shoulders and we're going to see some other countries moving right by us, and their economy is moving right by us. Our economy today, $12, $13 trillion GDP. Much higher than China or Japan, but I'll tell you they are gaining very, very rapidly. And we're coasting. It reminds me of the American basketball team in the last Olympics, a thoroughly American sport, basketball, invented in Springfield, Massachusetts. And with all of our NBA stars, we came limping home with a bronze medal, losing to Nicaragua and Finland along the way. Other countries retool. They are focused. And we're sitting here the same old, same old. So there's a lot of frustration there. I've been very successful. You give me the opportunity to serve as a committee chairman, to deliver a lot. I've had over 130 bills signed into law, and some of them very productive for this region, some of them on a national basis, some you never heard of that make little differences across the way. But I appreciate the opportunity you give me. As I said, members say, how do you leave? Usually the only cure for Potomac fever is embalming fluid. But I'm at the point having, between Jean Marie and I, having like 7 kids through college and so on, where it actually looks pretty nice being outside and not locked in. So, I said, when you're ready. And so we're ready for the next chapter of our lives. I want to continue to be active in the community, work with all of you, work with the Chamber. I'm very proud of the pro-business ratings that I've had through the years. But most of all, I'm just proud to represent this area. This is a very vibrant area. It's a wonderful place to live and grow and raise your children. And I'm, of course, going to stay here and to be a productive taxpayer. And thank you very much for the opportunities you've given me.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me here. I really enjoy all the free press I can get as a struggling candidate in my first run for political office. It's very, very difficult, as you probably all know, to raise necessary funds. But I like to first say, I'm going to put this down, it's a little high for me. I'd like to first say again that I am a physical therapist. I've been practicing for 13 years. I do have cards. I brought a lot of handouts with me that have my website, so if you'd like to get to know me a little bit better and learn about my experience and read my resume, I actually posted my resume online. I would appreciate that, because again, I'm not going to be robocalling you. I don't like robocalls myself. I'm not going to be sending you a bunch of unnecessary literature that you're going to toss away. I'm hoping that each person will just go to my website, which is free and doesn't pollute the environment, and then learn a little bit about me. But quickly, I'd like to tell you that I am a physical therapist. The field of physical therapy is a great profession. It's a profession of people who now need their doctorate degrees to practice, but we're kind, caring, and compassionate individuals. I'd like to announce that I've been just recently endorsed by the American Physical Therapy Association, which is a member of, has 71,000 members, physical therapy members that are very strong in the organization. And most of us, of course, I would like to say all of our physical therapy people want to improve the health care of all individuals, regardless of economic status. And we do so with very little money. We make probably half of what physicians make, even though we need just about as much college education and graduate school education. But what I really like about the physical therapy profession is that the people who practice go into the field of physical therapy because they truly want to help others. And I want to bring that strong work ethic into Congress. I think we need more people in Congress that are kind, caring, and compassionate individuals that are willing to get along with all individuals, regardless of political affiliation. And I see that many people in my Democratic Party are a little bit too polarizing, that are making people in the Mount Vernon district a little uncomfortable. And I'd like to quickly say that many people in my district really like Tom Davis. They were Democrats and they voted for him every 2 years. So just keep that in mind. There are Democrats out there that do look at the person and not the extreme views of some individuals. And please come and visit me. I'll stay as long as I can. I have to pick up my little ones at 3 o'clock, but I'll be here till about 2:15 to speak with you. Thank you so much.
It's wonderful to be here and be with you again. As some of you know, I started in politics in 1985 in the House of Delegates. As Ian pointed out, I served 4 terms there. I served as Virginia's first woman in Congress in 1993. Thank you. Is that bell for real? You can add some on now. And I served as the nation's consumer advocate in the Clinton White House. Went on to the Virginia State Senate in 1999. And in both the Congress and in the Virginia Senate, I represented the Tysons, Vienna area, so I'm familiar with a number of you. And over that time, I've come to recognize some things that I think our politics should reflect. You know, for so long now, we have seen this idea of pay to play, that those with the largest voices in government are those with the largest checkbooks. I don't think that should be our goal in government. I think we should be standing up for ordinary folks who go to work every single day and work hard and play by the rules. Those are the folks that I hope to represent. Some of you know that I've been around a few years. I've worked with Jane and I've worked with Maud and Edith and a whole host of you on some issues that we all know have been facing us for several years. One of those is transportation. In the United States Congress, I was the first to get federal money for rail to Dulles. One of my criticisms of what we're doing now is it ceased to be a transportation project and becomes a land use project. And one of the areas that I feel is going to be most deeply impacted by that is Vienna. We can't continue to use Vienna as a pass-through to other places and expect our transportation to get any better. I had not planned actually to run for this office. And I started thinking about why I was going to run. And I was looking at the kind of legacy that we're going to leave our children and grandchildren. I want to work for you to get us out of this endless war. I want to work for you for making sure that our children and grandchildren have clean air and clean water, and to make sure that they have jobs that can support their families. That's why I'm running. That's why I'm asking for your support on June 10th. Thank you very much.
Pleasure to be here. You know, I have a great time out on the campaign trail. I go out and I meet people, I go to their homes, I talk to them personally. This is a great opportunity because I can talk to some key influencers in the community, and I appreciate the opportunity the Chamber's given me today to talk to you very briefly, now 1 minute and 45 seconds. But I want to talk about a couple things. First, I did plan to run for this race. I believe that our nation is off track. I believe that our nation is off track, not only in the Iraq War, this was mentioned earlier, transportation mentioned earlier. I believe that we need to do a lot of things about the economy, and I believe that we need someone that's ready to lead, that has experience in these areas, that can talk about the issues that matter to you, not only in this room, but people that you represent. I've got a great family, I've had a great, successful first career, and I'm excited about the opportunity to bring change, and not only to change the direction our nation's going, but the direction that we have here at home. You know, we all turned here and we saw the construction out here to the side, and we know what's happening with Tyson's Tunnel. We need leaders to stand up regardless of the consequences and lead. We need people to stand up and say, the tunnel needs to go through Tyson's Corner, that we need to find the money for rail to Dulles. And if we fall short in that, our responsibilities as leaders is to tell people why, but our real responsibility is to fight. We've got a great campaign. We've got 4 members of Congress that have endorsed me in this primary, which is unique. We've got Congressman Joe Sestak, Congressman Patrick Murphy, Congressman Gene Taylor, and Congressman Phil Hare. We've got a full-blown campaign. I'm talking about all the issues that matter, and I'm going to give you straight talk because I served our nation for over 22 years. I'm fully prepared and ready to serve again. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I will tell you that I'm a local businessman. As John mentioned, I started my company in a room above a garage about 3 miles from here 22 years ago. It's called U.S. Inspect. We're a nationwide home inspection company now. We're the largest in the country. In fact, if corporate America is moving you, there's about an 80% chance that my company will inspect the house you're vacating no matter where you are nationally. We've also got employees in about 20 markets. And we've got about 8,000 subcontractors. But the best days of the company are ahead, and it's difficult to leave because we've got a commercial division we just started that is looking robust. And I love what I do, but I am getting involved because I believe that if I don't, this country will not be for my daughters what it was for me growing up. I've lived in Virginia since I was 9 years old. Went to William & Mary, was an accounting major. I captained the football team. We were the last William & Mary team to beat Virginia Tech, Virginia, and Navy all the same year. I had big games in all 3, too. And I had a try with the Browns, got hurt, and then worked for Pete Marwick for 7 years. Was transferred 3 times. Did a rotation in the firm's executive offices in New York City, which was splendid. And started my company in 1986. I've been married 26 years. My 3 daughters have grown up here. The oldest is in Manhattan at J.P. Morgan for 3 years now. The middle is in college, and the youngest, in fact, is in college at William & Mary. I'm not a professional politician. I'm a small businessman, just like you all. I know what it takes to start a small business and what it takes to make a payroll. I know what that means, just like you do. And I'll tell you, when I started mine, I felt like I was sawing the branch of the tree. We didn't draw salaries for 1.5 years, and as I'm sawing through this branch, the tree's that way, and I'm looking down thinking, this thing doesn't work, I'm in big, big trouble. Well, it worked. We killed ourselves and got it off the ground. Career politicians don't have a clue what it's like to start a company, how to do more with less. It's simply foreign to them. It's not foreign to me. We have got to bring some of the common sense business principles to government. I'll close by saying both parties have good ideas. I'm a Republican, running as a Republican, but I'm really running more as an independent in the sense that Tom Davis and John Warner and I are soulmates in that sense. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
The question is, concerning rail to Dulles, which would you prefer through Tyson's, overhead or tunnel, and why, and how will you make it happen?
The original deal, the aerial alignment, was something that was not well studied, in my opinion. And it was something that Governor Warner and Jerry Connolly had a lot to do with. There's been a lot of failed leadership with this particular issue, in my mind. There's $900 million, federal dollars, that are at stake here that we need to make sure we receive. And that money is very much in jeopardy. I think if a tunnel had been adequately studied at the time and due consideration given, we might not find ourselves in this position. I've talked to Tom extensively about this, who, by the way, has endorsed my candidacy. Gosh, wow. I guess I'm out of time, but
No, I mentioned in my introductory speech that I believe that rail should be going underground, the metro should be underground through Tyson's Corner, and I believe that we need to fight for that $900 million. And the way we're going to do it, I'm a business executive as well. I work for the Boeing Company. I'm a salesman for a $3.3 billion program. I understand cost, schedule, and performance. I understand the need to make those parameters. This project has failed in all three of those categories, so we need to rebid it. We need to get back and bid this project properly, put oversight, no single bid contracts. This is a federal tax dollars, this is local tax dollars, this is money out of your pocket. We, as members of the government, deserve to lead in this procedure, and we deserve to give you the tunnel you need through Tysons and the rail you need to Dulles. Thank you.
Out of all of the people who are running for this office, I'm the only one who has seniority going back to Congress. And some of you remember I served on the Transportation Committee, so will be eligible to take any vacancy in that committee because of that seniority. I think the previous Congresses have missed the boat on rail to Dulles in not looking for other sources of money besides just transportation. We have Homeland Security money that's flowing. You can't tell me that the tunnel isn't going to be more secure than the aerial. And I think we can look to Homeland Security money. I think we can look to EPA money. There are other baskets that we haven't tried. And so my commitment, just as it was in 1994 when we got this started, is to continue to see Dulles Rail built. Thank you.
The Tysons Corner area is the economic engine of Northern Virginia, and I think actually probably of all of Virginia. And we need to support a tunnel to Tysons, there's no question. My husband, I am very fortunate to be married to an extremely brilliant mechanical engineer who built Virginia Hospital Center and the Mayo Clinic, the new building of the Mayo Clinic, and he tells me, which I totally agree, you have to do it right. If you're doing a construction project, I think Tyson's given enough tax dollars and these businesses have paid enough tax dollars to get a good, decent tunnel. And we need to use that money and fund it. Thank you.
A question for all. It's a very short one. What qualifies you to serve in Congress?
My thinking is if more Congress people were like me and had my values, I think this country would be run much better. I think we need people who don't have extreme special interest in mind. I think if we were kind, caring, and compassionate, could sit next to each other and speak with each other. I mean, some of the behavior I see in Congress these days, I don't know if I would allow my children to be present in the room. And I really think we need to do something about this. I think we need kind, caring, compassionate people, people who don't have a bunch of baggage, and people who aren't extremists. And I think I bring that along as a new candidate. I truly care about people, and I'm very open, I'm very welcoming, and I listen. I listen very well. Thank you.
Well, the Constitution says you have to be 25 years old and a citizen of the United States. That's the qualification. And the qualification isn't for us to judge on this dais here. It's for you to judge. A story that I will tell you, when I first went to Congress, I had a group of 7-year-old Brownie Scouts in my office, and it was my job to explain Congress to them in about 15 minutes. And as they were climbing over the furniture and hanging off the draperies, I did the best I could. When I finished, this little girl raised her hand and she said, "Mrs. Byrne, can boys be in Congress too?" And I tell that story to remind you that we're all the product of our experiences. I've served in Congress, I've served in the White House, I've served in the state legislature. I'm a businesswoman, I've owned businesses and continue to own a business. These are the part and parcel of who we are, so it's up to you to judge, not us. Thank you.
Well, when I was 17 years old, I raised my right hand and swore in the Constitution to defend the country, defend our nation, and to work for all the taxpayers. I took that charter all the way through the age of 45, served our Navy, as you know, and What I learned there was about honor, courage, and commitment. I learned about leadership. I learned about working with people. And I carry that forward here locally. I'm the member of, or was a member as well, of 3 county boards, one on the Environmental Quality Advisory Council. I'm the president of my Citizens Association. I serve on the Industrial Development Authority, and I also serve on a group that raises bonds for hospitals. I believe that I bring that, plus my Tyson's Tunnel experience as a member of that committee, as a local issue. I understand the federal issues, and as a Iraq War veteran with skin in the game, I know we need to bring our troops out of Iraq in a smart phase withdrawal. I'm the person that can stand up against all other opponents and talk most strongly about this most important issue. Thank you.
What qualifies me is the fact I'm a small businessman who has had to make a payroll, and I understand what it takes to run a business. That's a unique qualifier. We need more business people in the Congress that know how to do more with less. Moreover, in business, you learn to work with people. You have to. To get things done, there's a lot of give and take. And I will bring that very same thing to the Congress, where to get things accomplished, I will not take irrevocable positions on very many issues. I want to make sure that we're working in a way that accomplishes what we need to accomplish so that we're leaving more for our kids than we were left. We're the first generation to put that at risk.
The town of Vienna is being surrounded and choked by development. Merrifield, Metro West, and now 200% growth at Tyson's Corner. Vienna has no support from county, state, or federal elected officials. How will you support and protect Vienna's current lifestyle?
There's no question about that we need to be sensitive to the communities that we represent. And in many ways it appears, in fact I was talking to a gentleman here this afternoon that has said he's been trying to get the impact study that apparently has been done and Vienna has not been able to get their hands on that would indicate what some of these changes might mean. We've got to be sensitive to the issues that are important to Vienna. I live here too. I live in Oakton and drive up and down these streets every day. Traffic has multiplied in 20 years beyond what one would recognize. And as a consequence, we have got to be sure that whatever changes are made, it doesn't paralyze things out here and the small businesses here and the families and make our commutes even worse. So you can be certain that I will be first to defend because of my knowledge of this area, what Vienna needs.
Well, at the federal level, as we know, it involves important things like mass transit, getting people off the streets, out of their cars, off of Maple Avenue and into the Metro and other areas like that. And, a secure funding stream for Metro, we need to work on that. And that's a federal responsibility that needs to be worked on. At the local level, you've got county and obviously ordinances here as well. Those are our enforcement tools, and those need to be held up. Now, there's some nice developments that have gone in. I know they impact you, but if we are going to have growth outside of you in Fairfax County, then it's important to have smart growth and to do things like transit-oriented development, to put those types of communities next to metro stations, because let's face it, the problem here is with traffic, and the problem is with people that have gone before us that have made some poor zoning decisions. So I believe that at the federal level, let's get Metro fixed. The local level, let's ensure fellow Democrats and Republicans do their jobs and keep the zoning where it needs to be. Thank you.
Some of you may know over my legislative experience, I was the author of the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance that tried to tie growth and infrastructure together. I still believe very strongly that we can't look at transportation or these mega growth projects that we see crowding Vienna without some kind of coordinating effort between infrastructure. I am fully prepared in Congress to go and tie our transportation dollars to land use planning. I don't think we should be just throwing transportation dollars away without any consideration of how those dollars are going to be spent to better the quality of life, not just to build more roads.
I'm fortunate to live, or maybe unfortunate to live in Mount Vernon, as you all heard about the BRAC situation. I used to be able to, before 9/11, go to the Springfield Mall within 10 minutes. Now it can take me, with all of the federal employees that are now at Fort Belvoir, 45 minutes to an hour to go, 5 miles maybe, if I'm lucky. So I stopped shopping at the Springfield Mall. And I think actually the Springfield Mall is actually feeling a deep impact. And maybe the same thing is happening to Tyson's. I would love to go to Tyson's Corner and shop there, but it takes me an hour and a half to get to Tyson's. So I'm not going to drive there, even though it's only 14 miles away. So one problem, I think, is the reason for the traffic. And when I was in Minnesota, I lived in Minnesota for 5 years, and I was for the Sierra, I was a Southeastern Minnesota Sierra Club director. It was a volunteer position, but we were against urban sprawl. I saw what was happening with people. They make a lot of money. They want to build these huge houses, and they go further and further away from Washington, D.C. Well, I live 10 miles from D.C. I can get to D.C. in 20 minutes, but the houses are built in 1950. They're very small. They were affordable houses. And I know and what's happening in here, and I think, again, I've heard a bunch of people saying that it was, I think it's actually not allowing the developers to pay their impact fees. We don't make developers pay enough for all of the houses that they're building, and they keep on building further out, causing the traffic situation. So maybe if we would actually make the developers pay a little bit more of some money for the schools, some money for the roads, some money for public transportation, then I think we would have a better situation. But again, I believe that this county has allowed the developers to run it. And I think we need to do something about it. Thank you.
The next question is for all the candidates, but we'll start with Doug on this one. What would you do to get the economy back on track?
Well, my campaign, I define myself as a new generation Democrat, someone who believes in strong national security, but we need to bring the troops out of Iraq, someone who believes in progressive values, but also in fiscal discipline. And the answer to your question is, your next congressman, is I'm going to balance the budget, or I'm going to try like heck to get my comrades to come along with me and do it. We're going to fight because we need to show the rest of the world that the bright and shiny nation that we once had is going to stop doing things like reversing the trend in our national debt. You know, we have a $515 billion defense budget. It's growing every year with supplementals. We heard Tom talk earlier about mandatory spending and discretionary spending. We've got entitlement issues, but we need to do something. That's going to be a combination of reduced spending and increased taxes. And you need someone like myself that's going to stand up and make those hard decisions. Things I talked to you about, being a leader, someone that says this is what has to be done. This is a 2-year term. And I'm going to fight like heck for 2 years to get our fiscal house back in order. And if the voters appreciate that, they'll keep me for many more years. Thank you.
I believe that, first of all, we're going to have to extricate ourselves from the Iraq War. We are spending over $3 trillion right now to keep troops there, and it hasn't made us safer, and I think we all know that. I also believe that we've got to institute, or I should say reinstitute, from when I was in Congress, the idea of pay-as-you-go. We can't propose any new programs unless you cut somewhere else. That's what that means. And if you're going to cut somewhere else, I think what we have to do is look to spend in making college more affordable, opening up our educational opportunities, and make sure that we are investing in things like green-collar jobs that are going to be the jobs of the future, so that we can address environment and climate change by investing in those jobs that help us in this country. Thank you.
I am, being a physical therapist, I see so much government waste on a daily basis at the hospital. Do you know that patients are charging, hospitals are charging the government, $10 for aspirin? And again, as a physical therapist, I see all this waste, and I see procedures that the more procedures are done on people that are fully covered. Let's say people who have Medicare and they're in that age bracket, the doctors will do everything without second opinions. Why? Because it'll be covered. But if you're my age or younger, then they're more hesitant, and some people are not getting care at all. So I think what we need to do is reform the healthcare system. Like Tom Davis mentioned earlier, that he sees a lot of money being spent in entitlement programs. And my youngest patient is 70 years old. That's my baby, is 70. And my older person who I treat is 100. And so it's amazing. But again, I do unfortunately see people that are overtreated, and they're billing the government. And I think we need to fix that. We need to look at healthcare reform. And I'm the only candidate here that actually has experience working in the healthcare system, 13 years of experience. And I hope you don't take that lightly, because I think it's very, very important. Thank you.
One thing is for sure, we will not tax our way to prosperity, but consider this. Kennedy proved that tax cuts work. Reagan double proved it. The tax cuts 5 years ago, it's irrefutable. Our economy in 5 years has grown $2.5 trillion. People complain that China is growing at 9% a year and putting all sorts of pressure on worldwide raw material prices, which is true, by the way. China's entire economy is $2.2 trillion. We grew that, more than that, in 5 years. We are the economic envy of the planet. What we have to do, folks, is reduce taxes and free the creative genius of the American people to solve all these problems. They are all solvable. But government is not going to solve a bunch of them. Free enterprise can solve the vast majority of these things we face. And look no further than the microprocessor or LASIK surgery, something not covered by insurance. Better, faster, cheaper, safer, more efficient, the whole thing. Free enterprise is our way out, and cutting taxes is the way to free enterprise.
This question concerns health care. 5 million Americans have Alzheimer's disease, and 70% are cared for at home by family members, 57% of whom are in the workforce. Working caregivers lose an average of 23 days of productivity per year. How would you help these working caregivers and their employers?
My own family went through this recently with my stepfather, and my mother cared for my stepfather, who had Alzheimer's for 9 years before he finally passed away. It almost broke her health in the same way. He had fallen on her. She tried to get him out of the tub. We need to put more emphasis on helping those who want to keep at home, helping home care, make sure that those who are caregivers within the home have auxiliary help, that they have medical help, and this should be covered. Right now, our system is geared towards those big institutional ideas of nursing homes and all the rest of it. That's where our money goes. And I believe very strongly that we should it's cost effective to put more of our efforts into keeping people at home, making sure that they're safe and well cared for, and we can do that by government policy. Thank you.
I agree. There needs to be some form of government policy. This is one of these classic loopholes that exist between big government solutions, private enterprise. We have people at home that are taking care of their loved ones that really don't have a safety net. Now, I don't believe in safety net for everything, but this is a classic example where some good government policy in this area could alleviate problems not only for the folks at home that need help, but also the people that need to raise some money for their families. So I agree with Leslie there. One of the important things I talk about in my campaign is we need access to affordable health care for all Americans. We know about approximately 44 million people do not have access to health care for many different reasons. We need to have either public or private partnerships working together to give this. And one of our biggest problems are the increasing costs in health care. That's really what's driving the problem. The cost is going up and up and up, and the opportunity for either businesses or individuals to cover it cannot help out. So that's what keeps professional caregivers like Lori from coming into the homes in these environments. And that's something I think we should look at with policy.
This really is a question of health care. And in many ways, our system is broken. The idea of socialized medicine would do nothing but lead us to where Canada is, where only those who are wealthy can leave to come to the United States to get good health care. There are creative ways that we can help those who need help, but most fundamental among them is health savings accounts. When my employees get the sniffles, they go to the doctor because I'm paying for 80% of it. If they had that money that would go in a bank account for them, they could make the judgment whether or not they wanted to go see the doctor. And if they didn't, they would keep that money and take it with them just like a 401k when they left my company. Health savings accounts are a great example of how free market incentives properly placed can do a lot to solve our problems. In the same way, those with Alzheimer's parents would have access to insurance that would go above the health savings account so that they could get the proper care at home. There is a solution here, but my strong feeling is that government is not 100% of the solution, simply a part.
This is the perfect question for me because this is what I do as an employee at Virginia Hospital Center. I see my patients after hip replacements and I need to decide whether they can go home, they're safe to go home, or go to their house for home care. And do you know the insurance companies won't pay for home care? So it's the private insurance companies will not pay for home care, which is cheaper. However, they will pay for a for-profit Sleepy Hollow nursing home, which I will not even step into because it's so disgusting, sorry. This is just what I've heard from people. And, honestly, that's a problem. Because you know how much it costs to stay at Sleepy Hollow for a month? $8,000. $8,000. So a lot of my patients live in McLean. They're 90, some 100, like I told you. Very active women. Their husbands have passed away. So they need to start. They can't qualify for Medicaid unless they have $2,000 in assets. So what do they have to do? Sell their house or sell their assets. Because do they want to burden their children with these items? So I think this is a big issue, and I think it goes along all political and socioeconomic spectrum. I think Fairfax County, I can tell you, they're not enforcing. There's laws on some of these nursing homes. Sleepy Hollow has them. Many of them, they have an ombudsman program, which I've called and complained about the poor care, the quality care of these places in Fairfax County. The for-profit places are not doing anything about it. And I can tell you how many people have been in some of these places. Can you raise your hands? Okay, were they nice? Some of them, exactly, some of them. The really nice ones, the Lutheran homes, the wealthy people get the really nice ones, and the very poor people and the people that are struggling get the disgusting ones. I'm sorry to say that, I'm very direct, but I've been hearing my patients complain for over 5 years, and that's one of the reasons why I'm running to do something about it. Thank you.
Our last question is, would you like to make a closing statement of a minute or two? So, Lori, why don't we start with you again, and we'll just do it in alphabetical order.
Okay. Well, as you can probably see, I'm a very passionate individual. I grew up very, very poor. I mean, my family was sort of the American dream. My grandfather was born in Stanislas, Quebec. I have English as a second language. French was spoken in my home. But when we moved to this country, my mother said, "You were going to learn English." She didn't allow me. I got in trouble in kindergarten because I started speaking French because I thought it was cool. But she said, "No, I want you to be American. I don't want you to have to struggle in English classes like I did." And that's what I've done. And I still have some difficulty. My grammar probably isn't perfect. I'm a little sensitive to that because my parents are not college educated. But again, I come from that background of, second generation American, hardworking. I don't believe in handouts because as a physical therapist, I know what happens when you enable people. They become dependent and they won't do things for themselves. So this is what I think makes me sort of an interesting type of Democrat, because whenever I tell people from Massachusetts, they, "Oh my God, Ted Kennedy. Oh my God, she's a crazy liberal." But I say, well, you know what? Actually, look at John Kennedy. John Kennedy's from Massachusetts, and he was moderate. He was actually moderate. So again, I would like people to get to know me a little bit better. Again, I don't have a lot of money like most of the other candidates, but I'm very hardworking. And with all of, coming from extreme poverty to being the first college graduate of my family, you know that I had to work hard. And I worked myself through school, even with loans, even with scholarships, I still had to work. And that's how I'm going to work hard for you. And I will listen to you like I listen very closely and well to my patients. Thank you.
I want to thank the Vienna Tyson Chamber of Commerce for giving us this opportunity. This is our first debate of this election, and you were first on the list. And I'm appreciative of the time you've given us today to talk about the issues. I hope after our presentations here today that you will see that I have the experience and the effectiveness to do the job. I hope you will see that over the years I've been a big part of helping Vienna and Tyson's just make better communities. That's what this is about, is making better communities for ourselves and for our children. I'm extremely proud of my record because I've gone through these offices to fight for you. There's no question we need to make a clean break from the pay-to-play politics that we've seen for so long. When we talk about tax cuts, it's not meant to be in the hands of the oil companies who are reaching into taxpayers' pockets when they're making record profits and not getting to us. All tax cuts aren't equal. So let me help you. Let me fight for you. Let me be your voice. And again, don't forget the May 6th elections here in Vienna, and right after it is June 10th, and I hope to see you at the polls. Thank you, and God bless you.
Well, it's been a great afternoon, and thank you again for the opportunity to come forward to you today. You know, I'm about change. I'm about leadership. I'm about changing not only the direction that our nation is going, but what we're doing here in the district. I have children as well, a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old in the family, and I want to take what we do in Congress to have meaning in their lives for future generations, whether it's global climate change or health care that we talked about, or fixing the economy, or getting folks out of the Iraq War. You know, part of my passion about ending the Iraq War ties into so many things here. We can't do anything until we start bringing down the expenses, not only the 4,000 service members that lost their lives and 70,000 wounded, but also in the cost. I'm taking that passion personally. I'm talking about it all the time. I'm going to actually march starting on Saturday morning, 9 o'clock, right here at the Vienna Town Green. I'm going to walk from here, the heart of the 11th District, to the U.S. Capitol. I'm going to bring my plan for a smart phased withdrawal out of Iraq, symbolically delivering it to the President, to the Congress, because that is the #1 issue in the race, and everything else tends from that. And I'm the only candidate here that can talk most passionately and strongly about that issue and bring change to all of your lives. I appreciate the time. I'd like to make two differences. One, I don't believe in the Bush tax cuts. I join Leslie on that, that we cannot have a war at this level and also have tax cuts at the same time. It does not work. We are in a recession. Our economy is in the dumps, and it's due to failed leadership by the Bush administration. And secondly, pay-as-you-go has been approved. That was misspoken earlier. Pay-as-you-go has been approved. I just wanted to clear that up if one of my opponents said that. The point is, we need more Democrats in Congress to stand up and vote in that direction so that we balance those budgets. Thank you very much.
Folks, let me repeat. You do not tax your way out of a recession. But contrast for a minute the World War II generation with today. Those folks went off and fought and died and wanted no special recognition. I was doing my duty. Compare that today, 60 years hence. Everyone's reaching into the cookie jar, grabbing as much as they can. The average American family leaves behind to its kids $280,000. The average federal debt per family is $400,000. We need to stop spending. It threatens all of us. It threatens our way of life. Nice communities are a nice thought, but how many people here really think they're going to collect Social Security? The trajectory we're on, you're not. That's what Tom had to say. Look, we can solve all these problems. You can't do what I did in any other country but this one. Start a room above a garage. We were poor growing up, patches on our knees, not a joke. We didn't know we were poor, but the point is you can come here to America and do what I've done, what a lot of foreign people do because they work really hard. We need to make sure that we continually free the creative genius that I described earlier so that we can solve these problems because they're all solvable. And that's a very, very good thing for us. So what we need is leadership that allows that to happen. And there's a major difference between what I'm advocating and what these opponents of mine are advocating. I'd ask you to please consider that in your determination. But thanks for allowing us to be here today. It's a pleasure, and you've been a great audience.